Inward renunciation means renunciation that is undertaken with the mind. For example, there may be someone who has the habit of hurting others with harsh words. It does not cost the aspirant anything to replace that habit by saying only kind words to others. As another example, there may be some people who have the habit of telling lies unnecessarily. And in their case, they must begin renunciation by stopping the telling of lies, at least until such time that an occasion arises where, unless they tell a lie, some great calamity may occur. This type of mental renunciation will also not require any expenditure. While looking at a neighbor's prosperity, one must not be envious of his neighbor. Will making such a decision bring the aspirant any harm? In this way, when one begins to renounce negative qualities, he also begins to gain strength in renouncing external things. This world is like a dream, and in this dreamlike world, whatever is considered to be good or bad, merit or sin, or anything in the realm of dualistic morality, is of no consequence in the process of awakening to the self. Therefore, renunciation of both sides of duality, such as good and bad, or auspicious and inauspicious, is necessary to gain self-knowledge. Even though this may be understood, it is still difficult to eradicate pride. No matter how often someone may repeat it to himself, renounce, renounce, it will not make even the slightest dent on pride. However, if the reason why this pride enters one is discovered through inquiry, it can be eradicated, and renunciation automatically follows. The aspirant must come to understand that the reason why one harbors pride for objects is because he believes the objects to be real. If one understands that objects are only a temporary appearance and becomes convinced that objects cannot really provide true happiness, then the apparent reality of the objects automatically fades away. It then becomes possible for one to develop detachment for those objects that were previously held dear to one as real. A wooden toy in the shape of a tamarind pod is not a real tamarind pod. It is made of wood. However, unless one has the discriminative ability to be able to tell the difference, the sight of the wooden tamarind is sure to make one's mouth start watering. The reason for this is the conviction that the thing is real. Once one becomes aware that the tamarind is made of wood, he may appreciate the artistic or aesthetic lines of the toy, but it will not affect his salivary glands. This discriminative knowledge, or the recognition that it is not real, results in true detachment towards the object. This example shows us that the detachment towards objects is brought about by understanding their true nature. Unless the futility of acquiring objects in this world is impressed irrevocably upon the mind, self-knowledge is difficult to attain. Unless one understands the false nature of objects, one will never aspire for the real thing, the true essence. There can be no renunciation of the false as long as the intellect believes it to be true. The day that the wrong knowledge regarding the world is eliminated by virtue of the Sadguru's advice, one becomes convinced that this entire world is only a temporary appearance. And when this happens, one becomes able to look at the world and appreciate it as if it were a cinema or a source of entertainment. And with the detachment that has been achieved, one remains unaffected. Detachment without self-knowledge is like what is experienced when one is watching the activities that are going on at the cremation grounds. Without self-knowledge, there can be no real renunciation. And without renunciation, there can be no self-knowledge. This is the paradox. The saints and sages have given us various methods of getting out of this situation through such means as devotion to the Guru and God, singing the praises of the Guru and God through bhajans and kirtans, visiting holy places, giving in charity, and such things. In this way, the saints and sages have given an infinite number of means of salvation to humanity. Human nature is such that if a man is forcibly robbed of a thing, he suffers immensely. He will make persistent efforts to regain that thing. Yet, if he were to part with the same thing out of his own free will, that sacrifice would bring him immense joy. A man who is normally unwilling to spend a dime under compulsion would, out of his own free choice, spend thousands in order to feed the people at a religious gathering. However, there are countless examples of how, after mixing with saints and sages and chanting bhajans, even very proud people have changed. One whose pride previously would not have allowed him to submit to another person's will is now willing to bow in submission, pranam, to someone even of a much lower standing in society. By his keeping the company of saints and sages, he naturally and easily completely forgets his pride of caste or social status. That important man who was filled with pride and felt ashamed to even apply sandalwood paste to his forehead in his own house now allows the buki, the black powder, to be smeared on his face, indicating a total lack of pride. The same person who previously considered singing and dancing obscene forgets himself and his body and starts dancing in ecstatic joy with a partner while chanting the name of God. Understanding how aspirants sacrifice pride in this way, the saints and sages have given mankind the teachings prescribing bhajans and puja, worship, for daily practice. With this teaching, they have pointed out a progressive step on the path of self-knowledge. In this way, they impress upon the aspirant how easy it is to renounce the objects of the world and how to clear one's mental attitude from pride. Self-knowledge is the knowledge about oneself, Atman. Once we recognize who we really are, then automatically the determination is made regarding what is permanent and what is transient. Then, very naturally, the renunciation of the impermanent and the acceptance of the permanent follows. Because of the transient nature of things, the fear of dissolution is inevitable. The one who is overpowered by this fear of dissolution or death continuously strives to see that some particular thing is not taken from him. He takes every precaution to preserve his money, tries hard to see that his wife's youth and beauty does not deteriorate, and struggles to keep his status and authority. However, try as he may, nothing ever happens according to his wishes or desires. No one can escape their destiny. And because death is all-consuming, everything will eventually get crushed in its jaws. Even gods like Brahma are not free from the fear of death. Even if such a fear-ridden man were given everything he desired, could he avoid being afraid? If he needs anything at all, it is the gift of fearlessness. The aspirant must find that which will free him from fear permanently. This beggar called man, who has lost his own treasure of the self, continuously chants, "I am the body, I am the body." He is forever discontent, saying, "I want this and I want that," and wanders around, always begging for something in the world. He can only be pacified with the gift of the self. The man who chants, "What will happen to me, my wife and children, and the money that I consider to be mine," is always disturbed and upset. This sort of man needs to be given the gift of fearlessness and thus be made fearless. Only the Sadguru is generous enough and capable of bestowing the gift of fearlessness, which is the noblest of all the gifts. Kings and emperors and even gods are incapable of granting this gift of fearlessness. Although all earthly wealth is at the feet of an emperor, he is restless with fear at the very thought of an enemy attack. Even Lord Indra is anxious day and night with the thought that his status as king of the gods might be shaken by the austerities and practices performed by some sage. Reflect deeply on this. Can those who have not freed themselves of fear give the gift of fearlessness to others? Only those great saints, the Mahatmas, who have uprooted fear from its very depths by establishing themselves in the self and destroying the identification with the body, are capable of granting the gift of fearlessness. Except for these Mahatmas, the host of gods and demons and men are like penniless beggars. They can never get the gift of fearlessness unless they take shelter with the Sadguru. If they are gods, they entertain the pride of godly wealth. If they are demons, they carry the pride of their own vicious wealth on their heads. And human beings are crushed under their own burdens. Gods are no better than servants who carry other people's burdens on their heads. What is the lowly status then of the human beggar? It is only the Sadguru who extends his hand to lift their burden and blesses them at the same time with the gift of fearlessness. Of all the various types of knowledge, self-knowledge is the greatest. And of all the paths or dharmas, the true religions, or one's true nature, swadharma, is the most noble. The Mahatmas spread the knowledge of the self among mankind and teach them the meaning of swadharma. In this world, the knowledge of astrology and black magic, public relations, the various types of sciences and arts are taught. However, all that knowledge, except for the knowledge of the self, is false knowledge. Saints refuse to recognize these other types of knowledge and spread only the knowledge of the self. Many missionaries who are competing with one another assert their opinions and start giving advice, saying, My religion is the noblest, and all others will only lead one to ruin. Not only do they just give advice, but also they fulfill their sacred duty of conversion, sometimes through bribes or threats of burning people's houses, or sometimes even by killing people. Without much change from days of old, this kind of missionary propagation of religion is going on even today. This piracy of religion, full of compulsion and tyranny, is not useful for accomplishing the well-being of anyone. Saint Ramdas said, "If there is any one religion in the world that is noblest of all, it is Swadharma." And Swadharma means to live in one's true nature. To live in one's innate nature is Swadharma, even though one may belong to any caste, religion, or nation. To understand Swadharma, one must realize that it is existent in all forms of life, be it an ant or an insect. One's true nature alone is Swadharma, and all other paths or cults parading as religions are Paradharma, meaning that they are religions pertaining to something that is other than the self. And these various cults and religious practices put down certain rules and methods which are alien to our real nature. This is how we can define Swadharma and Paradharma. If we take for granted the currently accepted meaning of Swadharma, it can be considered absurdity. Suppose there is a prostitute. She also has a relevant dharma, her nature, which she follows diligently, believing that it is her Swadharma, or her true nature, her true religion. She teaches the same to her daughter from the time she is in the cradle, and in the end she dies following her own religion. Who can say, perhaps, that maybe even come forward to include this woman's life story in some book about religious saints? The Lord has cautioned us in the Bhagavad Gita, it is best to die in Swadharma, that is the death of body identification, which brings one into the self. Dharma that is alien is full of danger. While trying to achieve this, if death comes, it is to be preferred over following some other dharma which is alien to the self. The aspirant must recognize the importance of the caution that is being imparted in the Lord's words. Eradicating the idea of identification with the body is the sign of the knowledge of the self. Mahatmas experience this type of death while living. This type of death is to be preferred over the death that occurs when following someone else's religion. Saint Tukaram said, "I have seen my own death. How shall I describe that process which is unique?" How can those who live in a religion that is not of the self and who die a corpse's death understand this process of death while living? The unfortunate one only thinks of death in terms of various customs and rites according to one's religion. Those dharmas built on the strong basis of body identification contain the dualities of temptation and fear, heaven and hell, merit and sin, and bondage and liberation. Every human being has the right of following Swadharma, one's own nature, where there is no temptation of heavenly enjoyments and no fear of pain in purgatory, and where bondage and liberation have no meaning. There is a cruel but true maxim that states, whatever comes has to go. All of the recent pseudo-religions are spreading because of their newness, and in some cases even with government patronization. They will definitely sink to the bottom, and there will be nothing but glory and victory to Swadharma alone. Lord Krishna advised Arjuna on this. He said, "Leave aside all religions and come seek refuge in me. Come to me and leave off all of those religions which create hindrances on the path to reaching me. Seek refuge in Param Atman, who is the nature of self-knowledge. You will have realized yourself when you attain me, and there will be nothing more for you to do. All karma, all actions get exhausted in self-knowledge." On the pretext of advising Arjuna, Lord Krishna has given this advice to all human beings that they must fulfill themselves by accepting this advice that he has given. There is nothing in the whole world as sacred as self-knowledge. All other work or action is meaningless. In this context, one must not think that all other types of knowledge or actions except self-knowledge are useless, meaning that there are no value or without any result. However, they are of no help in achieving Swadharma. It is not that getting results as such, like a sun or heaven by means of performing sacrifices. By studying scriptures, one becomes proficient, that it is possible for one to appease various deities by worshipping them. Even if this is so, and even if all these actions are supposed to be meritorious in this mundane world, they are still hindrances as long as the self is not pleased and does not shower grace. The qualities valued as best in the practical world only count as disqualification, and all remedies only turn into obstacles in pursuit of self-knowledge. The sages know this well, and do not even care in the slightest if they are able to conquer all of the three worlds. The sages and saints consider Lord Indra's status, that is ridden with jealousies, to be as useless as the droppings of a crow. The saints harbor only one desire in their heart, and that is the desire of achieving oneness with Brahman. With regard to everything else, they are desireless. Those saints who are represented by statuses of auspiciousness became one with Brahman when their consciousness became disidentified from their body. In ordinary cases, the body is viewed only as a corpse, while in the case of those Mahatmas, they became worthy of worship, and they received adoration from people. Not only this, but also many temples were built around their shrines. Thus, these Mahatmas became immortal by becoming the object of worship and adoration by the whole world. Rama, Krishna, Siddhartha, Hanuman, and the like were all Mahatmas in the forms of gurus. While they were alive, they did the work of spreading knowledge, and they became gods when they left the body. All the temples on earth belong to these very gods who grant the wishes of devotees according to their vows and desires. They lift the aspirant to their own level and bring them to the achievement of self-fulfillment. Many people think that the God that one worships meets him when he sees a vision and gets his work done. But God is not limited to one point or place as the devotee imagines. God resides in the devotee's heart as well as in every heart. And it is the Lord who inspires one to get one's work done. Nobody should ever entertain the wrong idea that after the Mahatma leaves his body, he assumes the same body again and comes out of his samadhi and then gets his devotee's work done. When you wish that a certain person should get 10 rupees at Pune, you give a 10 rupee note in cash to the main post office. On the second or third day, you get the receipt indicating that the intended person has received the amount you have sent. Have you ever made inquiries to the effect that the same note or the same coins that you handed over to the post office have reached the intended person? No, this type of question never even arises in your mind. Your attention is centered not on the exact note, but on the value of the note. When the amount sent has reached the person, you do not have any complaints. In the same way, these past saints and Mahatmas who have turned into gods get the devotee's work accomplished through the Mahatmas that are living today and who are of the same caliber. This is the way their devotees' wishes are fulfilled. What magical skill did these persons possess who were honored in their lifetime and became immortal, thereby retaining their fame even after their bodily death? What special learning did they have that they should be adored by people even after death? In this world, there are many arts and sciences. Many discoverers and many adventurous heroes are praised during their lifetime. These heroes are congratulated and covered with garlands of flowers and bouquets. The people even express their admiration for the heroes by carrying them on their shoulders. However, in due time, a hero who had been an object of people's adoration soon becomes a subject of their abuses. Soon people who were pampered as heroes for a few days are condemned in an assembly. Sometimes even resolutions condemning them are carried out. It is clear that the greatness of these heroes is artificial and not everlasting, because their so-called greatness is based on transient learning or adventures. Their greatness is not based on the sacred learning that gives everlasting peace, like the knowledge of the self. It is based on some science, such as politics, with some practical motive. In politics, names and faces continue changing with time, and in the physical sciences, new discoveries follow one after another. A person who was once proclaimed as great is found to be of no importance, and in some other corner of the world, some other person starts shining on the horizon. The greatness that is achieved through any learning other than self-knowledge eventually takes an opposite direction. Because of this, these great ones have to suffer the sweet and sour experiences associated with honor and insult. It is no wonder that no one goes to the trouble of thinking about these so-called great men after they are dead. Out of all types of knowledge, vidya, self-knowledge, atma vidya, is the only knowledge that grants everlasting peace. One saint asked, "What is the use of any knowledge that does not grant peace of mind?" There are many types of courses of learning that are available in the world. Why is there such a proliferation of courses? The reason is that no one has found peace of mind. The struggles in the world have not stopped even a little because the restlessness of the mind has not ceased. Why is this? It is because all of these sciences and arts are centered in ignorance, and they are useful only for increasing the agitation and restlessness of the human mind. There is no relationship of cause and effect relating learning to peace. The one who evaluates various kinds of gems and one who examines various sciences and arts or aesthetics has lost the happiness that comes from peace of mind because they have no ability to examine themselves through self-inquiry. Why should one search another man's house when he has not searched his own house for something that he lost while he was at home? The man who boldly asserts, "This man is like this, and the other man is Mr. A or Mr. B," while he does not know who he is himself, is never free from restlessness. It would be futile to discover what thing could be extracted from where, or to know many addresses, if one does not know one's own address.